To enhance your learning, it's important to understand learning. Often we have this idea that it's like filling up a chalkboard. In fact, that was one of the early theories of learning, is that there's just this empty slate and you're just filling it up, and that's learning. Modern, it may be thinking about a USB drive. You put everything on the USB drive and you just download it to your brain. These aren't correct. Learning is a process. It takes time and is procedural. Learning is a change. When you learn something, you have changed. In fact, we know you've changed your brain. So as you go through the process of learning, there will be a change. This change can be measured by performance. We can't see what's happening to your brain, but we can see how you perform on different tasks and skills. Finally, learning is based on experience. It's not something that is done to a student. It is developed through what they are doing. A teacher does not teach and then learning has happened. It's what the student is actually doing that is the learning. Teachers develop the processes, the curriculum, the content, the interactions, the assignments to help facilitate the learning process. But all the learning occurs with the student. So process leads to change, and change comes from the experiences that the student goes through. There are some principles of learning that were published in a book, How Learning Works, by Susan Ambrose. Let's think about these 7 principles and discuss them a little bit. We have prior knowledge, organization, motivation, mastery, practice, climate, and metacognition. Now let's go back through the list and talk about each one of these. Prior knowledge. Your prior knowledge can either help or hinder your learning. Everybody comes into a class with different prior knowledge. That can either help you understand the basic math concepts of the previous, so therefore you come in with the right component skills, or hinder. You didn't quite fully understand integrals, and so therefore when you move on to the next course in the sequence, you have a hole in that content knowledge. Or you actually learned it incorrectly, and now we have to come over. Everybody comes into a class with a totally different prior knowledge. It's something to consider when seems like your friend is moving through the class a little faster than you are. Don't let it bother you. Their prior knowledge is different than yours. Everybody's experience is totally different. Organization. If we think about an organization, what that really means is how you organize the information that you're learning impacts your learning. College professors are extreme experts in their field, meaning that it may just not be, in my case, a chemistry professor, but an organic chemistry professor. And not just an organic chemistry professor, but somebody that did electroactive molecules and conductive polymers. And not only that, one small area of conductive polymers. So they're very high experts, and they have what you would call a matrix-style organization of their information. This is something you're going to develop. But having a nice framework for the organization of the content will facilitate your learning. Motivation. Turns out motivation is one of the 2 factors that can have the biggest impact on your learning. You need to think about your motivation whenever you start a course, and you need to have your values and your motivation to say that this is important. Mastery. To master something, you first have to acquire the component skills, practice integrating the component skills, and then apply the skills that you've learned to new applications and to new problems. Often when we do that, we acquire the skills, but whenever we start to practice integration, that often falls apart, and then if we don't get that, we can't then apply those to unusual experiments. You'll see your college professors doing this over and over again, where they acquire the skill, they want you to integrate that skill through practice, and then they want you to go a step further and look at a whole new environment to apply that knowledge. Practice. Goal-oriented practice with detailed feedback is important for your learning. Turns out this goes all the way back to when you were a baby. You watched for expressions of your mother to see if you were doing certain things right. You would try and mimic her, and then when she smiled, the indication from the smile is that you did it right. Same thing happens now. You want feedback, but now you need to make sure that you're doing practice that is oriented on the goal. In chemistry, you can practice soccer all you want, and it won't make a difference. You've got to be thinking about what are the learning outcomes in that course, and what are the goals of that course, and practice those. Then you also need feedback. Sometimes this feedback will come from an assessment or an assignment, but it can also come from your friends, your study partners. So think about your practice and the feedback. Try to get those as closely integrated as possible. Climate. It turns out that your intellectual development is related to your social, emotional, and intellectual climate. So while you're learning your course material, realize that all those things outside of your course are also going to impact you. Sometimes it's difficult to control these, but it is something to remember that it is important for learning. Metacognition. And it's a big word. What does that mean? It means becoming a self-directed learner. You have to monitor your learning and adjust it. Going from high school to college, it is not uncommon for a student that has made A's all through the high school to get to college and all of a sudden have a problem. You need to monitor how you're doing in a class, whether you're understanding material at the expectation or not, and then adjust your learning pattern to that. You may have never studied with a group, but you may need to. You may have only read before and never really did the practice problems, but you need to look at that and see how you can adjust to improve your learning. Metacognition is thinking about thinking. Think about how you're learning in the class. What do we know about learning? Learning is a complex process that results in change from your experiences. Learning is computational, social, and it is the result of a physiological change in your brain from the experiences that you're going through. Learning is not downloading all the facts. It's not memorizing a lot of data points. It's incorporating it into who you are. It's a process that takes time, takes effort, and a process you'll get better at the more you practice at it.